Hey everyone, this is Ergo Josh, and today we are going to finally look at how to use references properly. I've got a nice little PowerPoint lined up for you guys here, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. Cool. All right. So what are references? Let's just start out with the basics, right? A reference is simply something that exists in our current reality or, outside of the earth, beyond, something that exists, something that we can see. And we store them in our mind to be recalled later, or sometimes we just view it from life, or nowadays we can actually capture reference in images or in video format. Now, the thing is, most people use references to supplement what they have never seen, experienced, or studied. Sometimes it's just to refresh our mind about the details, because a lot of times we do see stuff, right? So even if you just decided to get into art at around 20 years old or 25, you've been consuming content, you've been storing things in your brain this whole entire time. So a lot of times we like to use external reference, and we call it reference in order to refresh our memory. But in reality, anything that we do, even if we think it's from imagination or from our minds, is referenced, and we're pulling from something that we've seen before. Because try to draw something that doesn't exist, and it's probably just going to be something that no one would be interested in because it's just a blob, right? So why are references important? Without references, our creativity would be heavily limited. That is 100% true. So what happens is our brain stores information as really, really simple symbols, at least for most of us. And so when we're trying to draw them, it ends up being not really interesting, and we can't really convey what we want to share. And you know that because you get frustrated. Using references help other people believe and connect to our ideas that we have. So when you have something you want to share with other people, that is really the whole point that you're drawing, right? You want to connect to people. You want to share something so that other people can enjoy it and understand it or learn from it, whatever you want to do to accomplish, or whatever you want to accomplish with your work. And the thing is, we don't all live in your head. So it's going to be really hard for us to get the idea that you're trying to sell. Sometimes, you create art just to really get people to ponder, right? But if you really want to sell an idea, especially if you're trying to sell yourself as an artist for, an industry job, you need to be able to develop skills that can help other people understand what you're doing. And that's a lot of what you're doing in the job, in the workplace anyway. You're trying to create an image or visualization so that you can sell it to the higher up, so that they can push your idea forward in the pipeline and get that movie made or get that scene done in the animation you're working on. This is why, this is something I've learned from Feng Zhu, who we'll talk about later, why sci-fi is really, really tough and expensive for movies or anything to be made, and why you don't see it happen as often. And when it does, I don't even know how long we've been waiting on Avatar to come out, the blue people. That's been forever, but that's basically like a futuristic fantasy sci-fi world that doesn't exist, but it's incredibly beautifully detailed to where it looks like it's reality. And that kind of stuff takes forever to make because we don't have as much to go off of. Now, that example, yes, we are drawing from some cultures that have been here on Earth, but there's a lot of new stuff we have to create. But let's say you're doing like an old-timey, this is from Westworld, and in this top left corner here, you're doing this kind of old-timey thing. That's something we all understand, at least if you know a little bit about American history. We all understand, know what's going on. We've all seen the movies. We all have that history to draw from. Some of us have seen it in real life. And it's really, really easy to be able to tell a story in a setting that people can relate to, even if it's on the other side of the world. At some point, they've probably learned a little bit about it in school or seen it in a movie. So when do we actually use references? And it's really just to add to an existing idea that you have. This is going to be the main reason that you want to use reference. Reference should absolutely support your creativity. It should not be the star of the show, only to be supported by your creativity, right? So to say it clear, references should support your idea. Your idea should not be supporting one reference picture that you found. That's going to create subpar artwork unless you're into hyperrealism, and that's exactly what you want to do. You just want to create a replicant copy. So with that in mind, you don't want to copy images blindly and wholly. That's also going to get you into copyright issues, right? You don't want to just copy it outright. When you use an image, ideally you want your result to not even really be that close to what the image was, especially if you're planning to sell something, right? So this is why also a lot of people struggle to find meaning once they start getting into art a little bit, and it can start creating art block and a lot of frustration. And if you put your identity in your work, this can be even more frustrating and debilitating to just your mental health in general. So I wanted to use myself as an example recently. This work that you see right here is something that I did February 2020. And then these two on the top and the left side are things that I did this year, about in the middle of the year. And I'm sure you can see a difference that not only are these just finished and I cared more about them, but they're much clearer in the idea that I'm trying to share, and they show a much more advanced understanding of the anatomy and just everything that's going on in the composition. Whereas this is kind of unfinished and the line work isn't really clear. The line weights, there's a lot of scratchy stuff left behind, and the shapes just feel too rigid. And it's because I was trying so hard to conform to the image. With these two, I started off doodling an idea. I had a whole sheet of things that I was doodling for the day. I wanted to draw from imagination, draw loosely from reference, and just see what I could come up with, especially this one. I was just like, I want to do something based off of a perspective grid. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, now I feel happy with this. I want to see if I can find reference for these hands, reference for the headphones, because I haven't drawn headphones much in my life. I want to find a reference for pants. I want to find a reference for how the shirt is supposed to look, right? If it's opened up a little bit. For the skirt, I was like, oh yeah, I got to add leggings. I forgot about that. How fabric looks when it's folded and pressed together, especially here on the bed. I look for a reference for that. And that's why these images have so much more interest and life to them. So people always ask, professional artists, oh yeah, so do you use reference? Is it okay to use reference? And the answer is always yes. I've never seen anyone actually have a challenging idea or opinion for that, but we still keep asking it. And I like to challenge you to think about the reason for that. And I would suggest the reason that we keep asking is because we know inherently that it's not really working out for us. Because the way we use reference is just to copy it and try to make something interesting out of that. So we're trying to find an answer, but we don't know enough, and we keep asking the same question. So the difference is when pro artists say that they use reference, it's because they use multiple reference to support the theme, the mood, the color, composition of the whole entire project, right? They're not just trying to copy one single thing. So I use this term manually photo bashing because photo bashing is a technique where you use a lot of images, you put them in Photoshop, and you try to paint a little bit to get a very photorealistic image that gets an idea very clear. And when your painting skills are high, it won't look bad. It will actually look pretty good. When I say manually photo bashing, that's like taking images, right? And then you just completely repaint them exactly how they are in the image onto your canvas. We're not doing that. That's not what we want to do. That's not what you want to do. You want to use your skills and fundamentals to absorb, reimagine, and visualize the idea, and then use the images to fuel it, to give it more spice, to give it more variety, to give it more life, so that the people who are going to consume your art later can really enjoy it and understand what you're trying to share. So if you look at these concepts here, the references they used, I guarantee you, they didn't find someone in this exact perspective with this outfit on. They combined tons of different things in order to share this idea so that other people can understand it and move forward with an overall plan for whatever this concept is supposed to go into, whether it's going to be a film, a series, an animation, or any shows like that. So let's go into our first case study here. I have Feng Zhu. He is an amazing artist who has an incredibly helpful YouTube channel. He creates basically content like this just for free out there, hours each video, but it takes him 6 months to make a video because he's so busy. And he always talks about extremely detailed, relevant strategies of how to go from zero to an effective concept. So I actually want to bring up something that he was working on in one of his videos. So this one is from 2019. And it's really cool because he gets into exactly like junior, senior level stuff and what you should expect to do. But what's really cool here is you can see he's gathering these images, right? He's very serious about them. Look at how he's organized them. This is something that if he's doing this for a video, you can bet that you can imagine how much more seriously he takes these references when he's actually working. And look at all this stuff, right? His idea is he wants to create Japanese-inspired canyon homes. So he wants to put a Japanese-inspired lifestyle inside of a canyon. Now, I don't know if that exists, but he's trying to do that here. So now he's starting to create drawings and thumbnails about how to get this to work properly. And you can see right? He's got an incredibly good understanding of perspective and his fundamentals. These already look extremely cool. And as we keep going, you can see he's talking about how he's fleshing this out, right? And you're going to be amazed by how he actually gets this to actually look real, because he'll use 3D, right? So he's starting to, add some lighting in, still just pre-visualization, super pre-visualization here. And then if I skip to the end, he's showing you the references and how he's using them to kind of zero into the details. Then he'll have his, people help him to get the 3D model stuff. He'll add stuff, he'll add comments, and he's starting to get these incredibly detailed renders / paintings in of this idea that didn't exist. These images didn't exist. Like, let's go to like this one. This is 3D. This is mocked up really quickly after doing all those concept ideas, right? This didn't exist before. He didn't look for a specific image to find of this at a specific angle, or these, whatever is in here, these paper things. He combined everything together in order to create an idea. Again, this is all 3D plus photo editing plus painting all together. And it's an amazing concept that he just did for this. I don't think it was even for a real project. He just did this for his videos and for something he probably paid some of the people working under him to help him with. So our next case study here is somebody that I recently discovered, Naomi Baker. She is a character concept artist, and she's really known for her work on the Ghost of Tsushima PS4 game. And she actually streams on Twitch live, so I recommend you guys check her out. She's always working on stuff, whether it's, well, obviously she's not working on professional work because it's usually under NDAs, but she's always working on stuff herself for fun. And she goes through this similar work process where she gathers references live. She talks about them and what she's looking at. You can tell how much passion she has for different things, such a wide variety of different things. And then you can see how she's able to create things from imagination, because she's been doing this for years, right? So if you can look at this concept art, let's actually go to her Twitch here. Which one did I want to show? So like this one, if we look at this, this is something that she was working on in the past. We'll talk about later with the bats. But this one, you can see how far she's already gotten. I don't know if she has any references off screen, but she's working on this samurai dude, right? Then at a certain point, let's see if we can get to there. At a certain point, now she shows you all of these different, all of these different references of these sumo wrestlers. Look at these guys. None of them look exactly like how she's painting them at all. She even has this one random guy with a tattoo here, right? And then she goes back to painting. And then when we get to the clothing, if I can find where she had the reference for the guy with the clothing, look at this outfit and look at how he ended up looking. Try to remember this image. He doesn't look like that picture at all, right? She's combining her own knowledge and taking this main idea of like this larger clothing, this article, and the kind of the somewhat similar color scheme, and she's adding it to this and draping it around his body and using her understanding of form and fabric and just gravity. All of that is combined, and is a really, really cool concept art that she's created of the samurai, of the I combined sumo and samurai, of the sumo looking guy here, and it's really, really cool, right? That's how you want to be using reference, even if you're not trying to be a concept artist, because this is cool. This is valuable. She could sell this, and she doesn't, no one's going to be like, hey, you looked at my sumo wrestler photograph. Like, no, this is hers, right? That's the goal. This is how you want to be able to use reference. So you might have been thinking, okay, Josh, well, I don't have, I can't do this. I don't know as much. And the reality is, you've just got to start a little bit earlier than the people I've showed you before. And you want to also start to use references to add to your visual library. And so in order to do that, you need to focus on doing studies. Now, of course, this might seem like, oh, I already know that. But a lot of people get distracted from other professional studies. So like I have Sam Does Arts as an example here. This is a study he'll do off of a photograph. There's a woman who stood standing in a subway, exact same scenario, really close, similar lighting. And he did a study of that. And we think we should do our studies like that. No, the reality is we need to focus on one thing when we're starting out, one fundamental to focus on with the study so that we can learn really effectively. So I have these images up here, which are the kind of things that you should be doing instead, right? So here, what is the goal? What is the fundamental? Clearly, this person is looking at two fundamentals. They're focusing on lighting, different types of lighting, and color. That's really it. They're not trying to play with a whole scene or make this pretty image. They're really focused on trying to push themselves to understand the forms of the face and how different lighting scenarios and different colors affect it. So your studies are not always going to look finished. Your studies are not always going to be pretty and popular. These are going to be things that you're doing to build your visual library. When you focus on one thing to start off of, that's how you know you're going to start adding to your visual library rather than just doing, unfortunately, just to say it, put it real, a sorry attempt at creating some pretty image that another professional is doing, and you're not going to learn anything from it, and you're not developing skills that you can apply to other things, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more actually about how to actually make sure you remember in a slide or two. I actually want to show you another thing Naomi was working on here. So I don't think she has a VOD of when she started this, but these bats here, the thing is, she didn't really know how to do bats this well when she started this off. She had a lot of references, but by the end of it, what she said on stream was she feels perfectly confident about actually painting bats. And I was joking with her, like, okay, can I hire you to paint bats for like 2 years? Because she was really feeling that confident about painting bats because she's studied it and she's able to study the form, the gesture of the bats. I guarantee you she did not find a bat for every single different pose, especially this one. She found a few different bats and was able to break down the components of the bat, the anatomy, the gesture, the form, the color, and move them around using those fundamental skills into a painting that's amazing and really cool. There's so much going on here that with the composition and the lighting and all the balance of shapes, she's using those core things that she studied in the past, those core fundamentals, to assimilate and combine all of these new references into something really, really cool. And that's how you want to be doing things, right? So even if you weren't a concept artist, if you did this your own style, that'd be cool. People would want to buy it, right? People would want to buy prints because it's something that is cool and doesn't exist already. So the thing to make sure is that when you're using references and you want to start building up your visual library, you need to use effective references, right? A lot of people think, okay, I'm studying anatomy, so let's get some figure drawing references. No, you need to start looking at diagrams, drawings, 3D models. If you're trying to study anatomy, why are you going to look up a picture of someone who has skin covering the muscles, covering the bones, right? You need to actually look up diagrams and things like this that's going to help you understand what's under there and then move on to different things later. Okay, so when you look up those gesture drawing figure, those nude models, you're doing them for gesture because you can't get gesture from this, right? This is really rigid. You get gesture from the whole body. When you want to study the forms of the muscles a little bit more and how they move when the body's moving in different positions and how they tense, then you start doing those shadow sketches and those shadow drawings. So actually, I'm going to pull this up right here. My anatomy research board here on Pinterest. Let me see if I can find something. I think I have a better one here. Yeah, so situational anatomy. I think this helps. Drawing. So when you want to start studying the forms a lot and you want to start focusing on rendering how the forms look in different lighting scenarios, these are the types of things you want to be studying, right? Then you don't want to be looking at those diagrams and those drawings. But when you're trying to really study, okay, what the hell is a femur and how does that connect to the tibia and fibula? Then you want to start looking at drawings like the ones in this board here and really start understanding it. You don't look at pictures for this. You look at things like this and diagrams and understand what's actually going on. You get books like Anatomy for Sculptors. This is how you study anatomy. Then you look at the pictures for gesture. Then you start to move on to more things like what Naomi was doing with that sumo wrestler dude. That's how you start to use reference properly to build a visual library that's going to serve you in the future forever, doing whatever you want to do. And here's a little example. If you're studying faces and heads, put down those Pinterest IG girls photos, right? I was there. I did it too. Maybe it's just part of the journey, but put those down and start getting an app like Head Atlas on iOS where you can just turn around a 3D model of a skull and learn how to draw the skull, right? Because that's going to teach you all the things that can help you draw a skull however you want later. Then when you're learning proportions, you want to learn unique differences between different people. You want to learn how to depict different ethnicities, right? Then you start to use photos to help you out there. And for this image I have here, this is an incredible image from Manga Materials Patreon, which I highly recommend you check out her Patreon. She breaks down the palm into all of these different easy to understand shapes. And now I can draw palms way better. You're never going to You're never going to get this clear of an understanding of how to draw palms by just drawing tons of hands. You're just not. And you might be able to get a better understanding if you use a really, literal, analytical, like almost doctoral anatomy book. But this is even better. Now you know the specific parts that make the palm look like a palm. And you know all the bends and the folds, the fingers connect to this thing. And now you can really, really start to move forward and be able to draw this at different angles. So now that we're still focused on adding to our visual library, how do we make sure that we remember these things, right? So I have some really, really good tips and fundamental strategies for you to, completely change how you do your studies. So first off, you want to try blurring some of your references. Don't do this all the time, just do it occasionally, right? This challenges you to figure out the details on your own and to see how your brain, get a feel for how your brain works with having a little bit of help, a little bit of an idea instead of just a blank canvas. You'll be surprised at the things that you'll be able to remember and add into the reference. Because I know it's hard when you have nothing on the paper, but if you have a reference, like let's just pull up a random image here. Let's just go pick something random. Let's go to concepts. Pick something random. So like this, right? If you blur this, you're still going to have a pretty decent idea of what's going on, but now you have to try to figure out how to get all those details in and make it work. You're going to be doing a really great exercise for your brain to try to remember things and imagine things and try to think about how to build this from essentially nothing, but you're giving yourself a little bit of a break by having something blurred on the paper. The next thing I want you to do is try to print your reference if you're traditional, or just put it on your iPad on a different room, or put it on your computer and your laptop in a different room. And then you can only use the reference when you walk over to that room to look at it. Now, that's not only going to get you a great workout and keep you in shape while you're working on art 24/7, but it's going to give you an idea. It's going to strengthen your ability to absorb and observe really well. You're going to start to learn how to simplify really quickly and effectively. You're also going to start learning how to absorb more than just one detail when you look at something. You'll start to be able to focus on 2 things and then 3 things at once. And you're going to get really, really good at observing in general. And if you keep doing this, you can just keep it on a different monitor. You can, when you find the urge to look at the reference, you push for maybe 1 more minute. What else could I do? What else could I add to this? I'm not going to look at the reference. You just make this part of your everyday. You make it a habit. You're eventually going to start getting closer to Kim Jung-gi. I'm sure you know who he is, but if you don't know, he's basically a guy who can just sit somewhere and just draw everything perfectly as if he has a million cameras that he can reference from. But this is the skill that he has maxed out, and this is a really great way to try to train your ability to develop this skill. And the last thing for this is to draw from life, right? So people say to draw from life all the time, and I want to draw things that aren't really around me a lot of the time, right? If you want to draw animals, for example, good luck doing that. But the reason they say it is really good, and I think we're at a loss in the art community when they don't say it. The reason is because we're challenged to absorb and simplify a forever changing world and kind of display it in however medium we want. That's just not going to be as good as a reality, but we're also going to add our own personal flair and taste to it. So if you want to paint an elephant, yeah, you can look up images of an elephant, but imagine going to a zoo or going on a Serengeti wildlife retreat thing, and then you'll get to see the elephants up close. And only for a moment, you can capture the size and the magnificence and the texture behind the elephant. That actually sounded like an elephant right there. But yeah, imagine getting the size and the magnificence of an elephant right there. You're going to be forced to try to convey that relatively quickly, and it's going to be a feeling that you can show in your artwork that you can't get when you just look at the image, when you just look at the reference or maybe even a video, right? It's going to give you that skill, and that's why they keep telling you to draw from life. You don't have to, but it gives you this ability that's going to set you apart from a lot of other artists when you do it, right? And even then, it doesn't even have to be something as crazy as an elephant. Imagine just sitting down and watching somebody at the library or on the subway. The lighting is always changing. Time is passing. Every time you move your head, it's a slightly different perspective. They're always going to be moving. You're going to be forced to take all of that into your art and find a way to make it creative and interesting on your paper. And that is a skill. That is why people love art. That is why people look at art, even though they can have photos. This is why, because we can capture all of these things and display it in a creative way. And so the last reason to use references is to simply learn from other artists, right? And in order to do, the reason we do that is usually to steal their style, which I am pretty good at. So a great strategy for this is to gather work from artists you admire and write down what you like about it. And then write down what you don't like about it, right? That's something people don't do. And I think they're both equally as important because it tells you more about yourself, especially when you write down what you don't like. I think that tells you more about who you are as an artist and what you like individually, way more than when you write down what you do like about it. And take those notes near the references so that you can look at it later. And that activity in and of itself is going to help you get a very clear idea of who you are much faster than anyone else. You also want to limit yourself to few similar artists to study from, like a little group first, and then change the group as you feel like you're evolving. You should need to ask somebody. It's all about you and your style. So for example, I started off with a kind of bubbly, colorful aesthetic that I was really interested in this year with Nursan Bekaliev, Sanguine, and Sam Desarts. Then I moved on to anime kind of influence. And now I'm really interested in just Disney traditional animation like I always was interested in. And these are the artists I'm studying here. And I just decided to move on to these different groups of artists to study from once I feel like I learned as much as I could and I was more interested in something else. So this brings me to how to find good references, right? I think this is pretty much all you need to get started to start finding good reference, and you should be using Pinterest number one, because Pinterest is just a collection of all the other images online, and it's in a very, very, well curated fashion. The thing that I get though is like, oh, how do you find that? How do you find that, Josh? I can't, when I search for this, I don't get it. Well, first off, those people who ask me that are usually trying to find an exact image. And we already talked about why you don't want to be doing that. So that's always going to be frustrating no matter what you use. But also don't do that. Use the algorithm. Don't just search. Oop, I skipped ahead. Don't just search for stuff. Use the algorithm to let it tailor itself to your tastes, right? I already have that happening for me. So let's see what the algorithm thinks that I want to look at right now. This business thing is always annoying. So this is what it thinks I want to see on my homepage, right? A lot of girls, a lot of drawings of girls, and things like that. And it's tailored. Some of you might be like, wow, I wish you might be getting inspired from some of these. And you might want to, even something like this is really cool to use for a pose to kind of build something off of later. And then I just have this happen and I scroll through and I add them to different boards that have even more specific tastes to them, right? You use the algorithm and let it find stuff for you. So like I have this faces one that I've been building for a long time. There's 1,400 pins here. If I want to find more stuff like this, specifically like these images, I can click more ideas and all of a sudden I get only portraits, right? Or mostly portraits at least. And I can go back and let's look at another one. Let's look at Style Builder, right? This is personally stuff the style that I like. And I can go to more ideas. And we can see there's all kinds of artworks here of a certain style that I really like. And I can find more artists and more inspiring stuff to look at when I'm working on trying to develop my own style, right? From all kinds of places, from content, from specific artists. So that's what you want to be doing. I have my Patreon linked or my Pinterest linked. I'll link that under the video if I can remember. And I have that linked here as well so that you guys can follow my boards and find some things to help get the algorithm used to you, right? Next up is ArtStation. It is for usually industry concept art, but here again, don't search, don't use the really crappy like filtering system they have. You want to just look at artists that you like and then find their likes. So Nursan Bekaliev, I talked about him already. I'll just go to his likes. He has 3,000 likes. He's curated a list of artists for me and artworks that I find interesting that I don't have to search for. So I remember this is how I discovered Gloss. Very similar type of artwork, very bubbly, very soft and easy to look at and just enjoyable. Very good at painting lips, right? And I wouldn't have discovered this artist if I didn't look at their likes. And this kind of happens. A lot of artists kind of know who's who and enjoy different things about different artists. And you can kind of follow in their footsteps. I remember learning from this artist right here. I don't even know how to say their name. They just go by TS here, but they have a specific way they break down forms that I really, really loved. And I would have never found them if it wasn't for just checking out the likes. So I have all these artists that I follow, and then I check their likes every now and then. And then that's how I discover more art to study from and build my style. Lastly, we have Pixiv here. There's a lot of really, really great anime and manga art. I won't show it now because I didn't prepare it in advance, but it's the same thing as ArtStation again. just look through, create your own account, find artists that you like, and follow their likes. And Pixiv also has a really good algorithm too. So every time you click something, it shows you more. And every time you favorite something, it shows you more stuff. And it can be addictive if you like the type of art that's on there. It's all the highest tier, highest quality anime, manga style artwork that you're going to find online. You're not going to find anything as good on Pinterest or just Google search. And a couple tips here is just software and habits that you want to be aware of. So VizRef is going to be an app for iPad. Sorry, I don't know about for Android, but on iPad, you can use this to just drag and drop images into a big board where you can just collect all the images and look at them as one. This is how you want to be doing stuff if you're into concept art, especially. PureRef is the version for desktop, and you can save out different boards like this and keep all the images and export them all. It's really, really handy. Habits that you want to get into are saving anything that you see. When you see something, save it. And have a good organizing structure that matters to you. It doesn't matter what I do or what other people do. It has to matter to you. That way it works for you, right? That's all that matters. And save anything you see. I take all kinds of screenshots. If I see something in a video on YouTube, I save it. I have a reference folder or playlist on YouTube for me to save stuff. I have all kinds of photographs. I take pictures of the TV screen. When I see something cool, I'll just stop and take a picture of it. Get into that habit, and you're going to thank yourself for it in the future. And here's some bad references and habits to avoid. So this is something I think is going to be really, really important. You want to focus in on this. And the first thing is going to be for faces especially, but really anything, flat lighting. You want to avoid pictures like this. High makeup, high glamour, beauty photo shoots. You don't want to study from these. Look at her eye. It's incredibly difficult to understand what's actually going on here with the form with her eye. But here, even though she's much fairer skinned, which is usually harder to find a nice, meaty, I don't know how to describe it, like a nice depth, pictures with a lot of depth, usually have to tend to have fairer or darker skin. It's easier to find that depth there. But here, with someone, even with this person with an Asian ethnicity and their faces tend to be flatter, this image has so much more information about the highlights and the form just because the lighting is different. And it's still pretty lighting, it's not meant to be dramatic like over here, but there's a lot more you can tell about the anatomy of the eye, and you can get a feel for the her entire eyeball in here and how the eyelid wraps around the top and the bottom, and you can get a feel for the skeleton that's under and the skull that's under here. Here, it's all so airbrushed and heavily made up, and the lighting is flat. There's a ton of images like this that you'll see in magazines. Avoid these. You're not going to be able to study good lighting and planes from that. Now, if you're trying to study proportions and you're just trying to study, beauty in and of itself, and you're trying to convey that, then yeah, you should look at those. But you should know that if your understanding of forms and the structure underneath is not good, you're wasting your time studying that, because your drawing still won't look good. Trust me. You got to study the forms and the structure first before you can get into the pretty stuff. And as a matter of fact, I'm just going to go straight to one of my favorite places to just look up. I think it's Earth's World. These are the type of photographs you want to look at if you really want to understand how to draw the face and all these different types of people. Look at the lighting here. You can really get a clear understanding of all of these little forms that happen on different people, different ages, different skin textures, all kinds of things. And the lighting is so dynamic, and you can get a clear sense of what you should be focusing on and what you should be simplifying when you're studying different faces, right? And then if I go back to this one, you can see this is kind of like halfway there. And this is like, no, stay away from that. But this has a lot. All of these have so much soul and character to them. If you can study this kind of stuff, everything you do is going to be way better. So the last thing is going to be warped images. Well, not the last thing, but warped images, stay away from those. You don't want to be doing crazy focal lengths. Usually, those kind of like selfie cameras that people do and post on Pinterest and Instagram. Don't look at those. Those are going to be really, really messy with how your face looks. So I have a few examples here. There's like 20 millimeter lens versus like 70 millimeter. And you can see here, his nose is much smaller than it is here. And when you start getting into different angles and stuff like that, it can be really tricky unless you really know what you're doing. And now here we are on the last page, which is kind of a really important meta thing that it's a suggestion, but I think it's still important if you really want to take this seriously and get good at observing life and using reference properly. And the first thing is to limit your consumption of social media. Yeah, because what happens is we are training our brains to just dump even more information than before. Just think about it. Your parents were not looking through thousands of images and videos per day. They were looking at real life, and they were walking the same routes or taking the same routes to and from work, right? That facilitates creativity. Have you ever been given a task and then they say, just do whatever the hell you want? All of a sudden you have no ideas. But when there's a limit, when there's a challenge, you have so many ideas of how you can make this really work, right? So many different ways to kind of bend the rules a little bit to get your idea to really shine. So don't be like these two people here. You want to be like these people, right? With their mask on, going out to see the world. You want to be like these kids right here, looking deep into the world. That's what we used to do. We all used to do this. We're interested in the smallest thing, taking in the world, taking in references from the world so that it builds our creativity and we can imagine little worlds going on right beneath our feet. You don't want to be like these people right here all day, just looking at their phones, learning, telling their brain that like, oh, images don't matter. All of this stuff doesn't matter. Just dump it because I'm going to look at something else and I can't bear to remember all this stuff. And then lastly, and probably most important, is don't aim for perfection. And you're naturally going to do this if you listen to the things I said before, where you're not just copying images. You're going to always be disappointed if you're trying to copy and aim for perfection. So let's try to find something again on Pinterest here. Let's see. I'm just going to look for something that I might feel like I want to paint, something that would inspire me in general. So like here's a good example. I really love this because of the angle that her face is at and the lighting and all of the texture. Imagine trying to copy this and make it look just like how it does here. It would be terrible. What I want to do is when I find this, sit down, write down what I like about it, spend 5 minutes looking at it, literally spend that much time, look at every single part of it, then make my own sketch with my own fundamentals and skills that I've learned. Right? Even if I have to create like a little diagram for myself for like what's going on, things I don't want to miss, like this line here going strap. I really want to make sure I don't forget about that when I do a sketch. And I just start my own and I do it myself. And then I casually refer to this. Once I've spent a few minutes with my own drawing, I casually refer to it to get the details. Like, okay, now I want to study the fabrics of this and I want to make sure I get the lighting right. That's after you've done a few single fundamental focus studies, because of course you don't want to just be studying everything at once. But here, this would just be like a casual thing you do for fun anyway. And so that would get you a good drawing where you're not worried about trying to be perfect. You think about what drew you to this in the first place, how you found this. You hopefully didn't find this by just searching for 30 minutes on Pinterest, because again, you shouldn't be doing that because you're starting from your own ideas first, or you're starting from a fundamental you're trying to study. No more spending 45 minutes scrolling Pinterest. You're going to be doing stuff that's deliberate. And so if you deliberately find this and you want to deliberately study this, it's going to be a much better experience. And whatever you come up with is going to be you. It's not just going to be a copy of this thing. And that's going to give you satisfaction and wholeness in your work. And it's going to give you skills that can serve you for the rest of your art career. All right. So with that being said, we've made it to the end here. And thank you guys so much for sticking through this. This is the first kind of presentation strategy I've done. Like this, doing it this way. I think it's going to be really helpful. Let me know if you guys are interested in getting the actual PowerPoint. I'm not sure if I will yet, but maybe if some of the things are too small on the screen. But yeah, I'll make sure to put as many links as I can referring to the things I talked about in the post here. And I really, really hope that this helps you. Please let me know if it does. Let me know any comments that you have. Looking forward to making the next lessons a lot more helpful and continue to really share these skills. And hopefully you guys can benefit immensely from them. So again, thank you guys so much. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.